Hello everyone, this is Debarko Ganguly, and today we shall continue from where we left with Macbeth, that is Act 1, Scene 3. And the section where we ended was thrice to dine and thrice to mine and thrice again to make up nine, peace the charms moon, that place. So today we shall see when Macbeth and Banquo entered the scene, and Macbeth says, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen." If you remember Act 1, Scene 1, you know that it ended with the prophetic statement or the cryptic statement of the witches. Fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and fill the air. And here we see that Macbeth is synchronized, he is attuned to the witches' discourse, to the witches' language and the witches' thought process, and therefore he almost echoes them. And look, Banco says, how far is it called to forest? That is, how much do we need to go, how far do we need to go to get out of forest? And suddenly the witches are seen to both Macbeth and Banco. And Banco says, what are these so withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on it? Live you, or are you aught? Aught means anything. That man may question. You seem to understand me by each at once a choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. Alright. Now, look, let's focus over the witches over here. What happens is that Banco gives a physical description of the witches, that is, they are withered, that is, they are very slim, they are almost dilapidated, and they are women, they have beards yet. Number 3 is that these women have skinny fingers and they are putting that on their choppy lips, and they seem to understand what Banco is trying to say. So Banco questions their entity, Banco questions their nature, that is, he asks what is the nature of the witches' being, that is, are they something natural or are they something supernatural? Now look, during Shakespeare's time, if you look at the Renaissance paintings even, you'll see that the woman's womanly beauty or woman's feminine beauties are always celebrated. But Shakespeare, by letting the witches have beard, actually talks about a kind of unnatural thing. That is, the witches are already invested with some supernatural, some preternatural, some negative, some destructive capacities which are not natural. Now, if we look at the text from today's perspective, women having PCOS often have some facial hair, and we are so accustomed with it in 2020 that it is not a big deal for us. Now, I do not know whether Shakespeare was actually talking about such women who had such symptoms and so on and so forth, but I just said that in 2020 it's not a weird side, because we are kind of accustomed to seeing such things, because with the rising pollution and everything, we know that women have certain problems, and now those problems are being openly talked about. Everybody knows about them. But in Shakespeare's times, if such problems actually existed, then they were less talked about and more demonized than actually being treated. So that's my point basically. And look, Macbeth says, but over here, look, one more thing is very important. Banco says, you should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. So what I was saying, the woman was celebrated for her feminine beauties and not for having beards or something which was unnatural. So facial hair or bodily hair was considered to be unnatural in a woman. Alright. And look, this also tells us that women were often subjected to the gaze of the man, to the judgment of the man, to the interpretation of the man. And simultaneously, it also talks about how we interpret the characters that we meet. You'll see that whenever we meet somebody, we form a judgment of that person in our mind. So that is also a part of how we treat that person. Right, so first impressions are important. when we will, if we read Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen later, then you will see that initially that novel was named First Impressions. So their first impressions become important, and how those first impressions are later worked upon, accepted or negated, that becomes another issue. But let us not ponder over that for too long, and let's focus on Macbeth. So Macbeth kind of commands them, speak if you can, what are you? So Macbeth does not question who are you, but rather Macbeth questions what are you. So Macbeth is more interested in their nature, in their being, rather than who they are. And look, they say, all hail Macbeth, hail to the Thane of Glamis. All hail Macbeth, hail to the Thane of Cawdor. All hail Macbeth, Thane to the all hail Macbeth that shall be king hereafter. So look here, I have some issues with the text, because Macbeth's father's name was Sinel, and by Sinel's death, Macbeth became the Thane of Glamis. Macbeth has already defeated the earlier treacherous Thane of Cawdor, and Macbeth, it is only natural that Macbeth shall become the Thane of Cawdor. And hail to the Macbeth that shall be king hereafter. That's another question which we will come to later. And look, Banquo says, good sir, why do you start? So why do you startle? Why do you get baffled? And seem to fear things that do sound so fair. And look, Banquo also plays upon the fair is foul and the foul is fair. But Banquo does not know that all that seems fair is actually foul in the scope of this play. In the name of truth, are you fantastical? So are you the stuff made out of fantasy and fable? Or that indeed which outwardly ye show? Or are you real? My noble partner you greet with present grace, that is Thane of Glamis, and great prediction of noble having, that is Thane of Cawdor, and of royal hope, so that shall be king hereafter. That he seems wrapped withal. Withal is an Elizabethan expression which means with. So Macbeth is already enwrapped, enamored with the prospects of becoming king. And look, he is simultaneously afraid, startled, and enwrapped. We shall get back to this. Why is Macbeth's first reaction such varied? And why is Macbeth's first reaction so very telling of Macbeth's character? That we shall come to later. To me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favors nor your hate. If you meet a local farmer, as I have seen often, they can predict which seeds will yield good crop and which will not. Now this is the first planting metaphor in Macbeth. You'll see that if we focus, if you have read the play or if you know the storyline basically, you will understand that the witches have impregnated Macbeth, the witches have rekindled in Macbeth his desire, his very desire to become a king via murdering Duncan. The witches simply suggested that you shall be king hereafter. They never suggested that Macbeth should be king by murdering Duncan. Alright. So, when Macbeth startles, when he starts to fear this prediction, imagine I'm walking through the street and there is an astrologer who suddenly comes over to me with his parrot maybe, and suddenly tells me, alright, you will get 1 lakh rupees. I'll be like, okay, fine, I'll get 1 lakh rupees. I'll be a bit happy and maybe tell my friends, some astrologer said that I will get 1 lakh rupees. But I would not go killing people to get that 1 lakh rupees. That's the only logical thing. Unless murder is already in my mind. Right? So you and I, we may laugh it off. Alright, fine, chalo. We'll get 1 lakh rupees. Alright, fine. Maybe we'll have a small pizza party. But nothing more than that. I hope so. Unless you have murder in your mind. Then you are on your own. I am not a part of this. Alright. So, they say, "Hail, hail, hail, lesser than Macbeth and greater, not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none." So all hail Macbeth and Banquo. Banquo and Macbeth all hail. So now look, Macbeth is promised much greater stuff than Banquo is, right? So lesser than Macbeth and greater. Why? Because look, later the witches say, "Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none." So your children shall be kings, but you will be none. But Macbeth shall be king. So already, if it's a seesaw movement, then now on the top end Macbeth is there, and Banquo is at the bottom. So lesser than Macbeth, but when Macbeth will die, Banquo's son Fleance will become the king. Later, I mean after Malcolm, perhaps. Clear? So lesser than Macbeth and greater, not so happy because he shall not be king, yet much happier, but he shall have a peaceful life. Macbeth shall murder his king, shall become the king, then realize that he has only killed Duncan to make Banquo's children kings. And then later he will say to Lady Macbeth, "Full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife." So Macbeth will have the throne, but shall never have peace. But Banquo shall never have the throne, yet shall die an honest man. So not so happy, yet much happier. Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. So all hail Macbeth and Banquo. Macbeth comes first for the time being. Banquo and Macbeth all hail, because future generations of kings shall hail from Banquo. Now here, there is something very interesting. This is a common technique, of the court poets, who celebrate the monarch in a way or the other. Alright. How? Because it was fabled that King James the First of England was actually a descendant of Banquo, of Fleance actually. It was a fable. I don't know if it's true or not, but it was believed. So you see, and James is the king right now. So when Shakespeare writes this, he will definitely get the approval of James. Such instances are not very uncommon. Like in the Bengali medieval Mangal Kavyas, there is one Mangal Kavya by Bharat Chandra Rai Gunakar. The name of the Kavya is Annada Mangal. Okay. And there is a certain boatswain, a bosun. This boatman's name is Ishwari Patni. Alright. So the goddess Annapurna has asked Ishwari to kind of help her cross the river. And there, when she actually reveals who she is, Ishwari Patni asks her, where will you go? And the goddess says, "Bhavananda Mojumdar Nibashe Rohibo." So I'll go to the house of Bhavananda Mojumdar. And the king whom Bharat Chandra was serving, the poet was serving, was actually a descendant of Bhavananda Mojumdar. So this is the subtle politics always played by the court poets. Alright, so let's focus on Macbeth. And Macbeth is very eager to know more. He says, "Stay, you imperfect speakers. Tell me more. By Sinel's death, I know I am Thane of Glamis, but how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman." How ironic. He has already defeated the Thane of Cawdor who was committing treason. And he says the Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman. If it's not a self-evaluation, that is, the Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman. So I am the Thane of... By logic, I am the Thane of Cawdor, the next Thane of Cawdor. I live, I am a prosperous gentleman. So you see, Macbeth always speaks in very cryptic notes. You cannot take any of his speeches on the face value. If you do, you will be doomed to misinterpret Macbeth. Because there is a very subtle political underlining, a very silver lining in Macbeth, which you cannot hope to miss. So look, I know I am Thane of Glamis, but how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives, a prosperous gentleman. And to be king stands not within the prospect of belief. And look, there's a comma, so Macbeth takes a pause. Just before saying and to be king, he used a semicolon, so there is also a pause. So, as if he is trying to negate what is going on in his heart. So, look, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief. He pauses, and suddenly he remembers that Banquo is there. So he says, no more than to be a courter. No more than to be courter. So you see, Macbeth is already planning, plotting. He's trying to reel in every prospect. And then he wants to know what is the source of their prediction, so that he can ascertain whether they are speaking the truth or they are just bluffing. Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence, or why upon this blasted heath you stop our way with such prophetic greeting. When did the witches give him a prophetic greeting? Macbeth could have absolutely dismissed them as three hags who were actually saying gibberish. But Macbeth chooses to believe that these are prophetic greetings because they have addressed him as Thane of Glums. And he says, speak, I charge you, and the witches vanish. And Banquo says, the earth has bubbles as the water has, and these are of them. Whither are they vanished? So Banquo is also very interested, and he says that where have these witches vanished? And Macbeth says, into the air, and what seemed corporal melted as breath into the wind. Would they had stayed. You see, Macbeth already laments that he did not get to know more. Were such things here as we do speak about, or have we eaten on the incense root? The incense root is often considered to be hemlock or the root of Macklewood berries. That takes the risen prisoner, so that makes you hallucinate. Now, you see over here something interesting happens. That is, some critics have argued that the witches are an external manifestation of Macbeth's inner psyche, that is, his own desires were actually showing themselves, just like the dagger. But unlike the dagger, which only Macbeth sees in the dagger scene, Act 2, Scene 1, the witches are also seen by Banquo, so they are very corporal, they are real. So the supernatural works on multiple layers in Macbeth. And we shall talk about the supernatural later. Now let's focus a little bit on the text. And look, suddenly Macbeth is reminded that Banquo's children shall be kings. And he says, your children shall be kings. So the seed of jealousy has fallen on the right soil. You can understand. And Banquo cannot take the hint. He jokingly says, just like a friend, you shall be king. And then Macbeth, in order to loosen the moment, says, and Thane of Cawdor too, went it not so? So I shall be Thane of Cawdor as well, to the self-same tune and words. So, yes, absolutely. Who's here? And entered two more Thanes, Ross and Angus. Now you will see that these two are not so important as characters, they are simply messengers over here. But even in these characters, Shakespeare has created certain variations which are very interesting to know. We shall focus on them in the next lecture. Alright, if you have any questions or any suggestions, please feel free. And you see, a text like Macbeth can have multiple interpretations, and all of them are valid if you can justify them. So let's have a very interesting discussion on Macbeth in the comment section. If you would love to give your opinion, I would love to hear them. Thank you.